to Journey to the Blue Sky. My name is Aaron,
My name is Patricia.
and we are going to discuss. Well, I'm still trying to comprehend what we've just watched, to be quite honest with you, because cast your mind back to when Pixar and Disney were pretty much at loggerheads with one another, and the relationship was not going all that well. And then we got quite frankly, the most bonkers announcement that we're going to get Toy Story 3, and then we saw like all the concept art that was going to come out for it about Woody, basically, sorry, Buzz Lightyear being defective and being recalled, and that was going to be Disney's idea of that. And but thankfully, common sense prevailed, and that never happened. And Pixar did go on to make Toy Story 3, and that became a very successful movie. And questions still remain to this day: what would have happened if Disney had gone through with what they were originally going to do and basically create a Toy Story movie in house? Well, Disney have done it with Blue Sky Studios, and the result is buck wild. And I have to say, this is the most soulless and most weird, just robotic thing that I've ever seen.
Yeah, so we already told you in the last episode about what happened with Blue Sky Studios. So around 2021, that was when Blue Sky Studios shut down after the purchase of Disney. Now, there's still a little bit of debate about what the situation of Blue Sky Studios was. Some people said that Blue Sky was already in a lot of debt, and then Disney was trying to help them out, and then they decided to shut down. Others said that Disney just wanted to use Blue Sky Studios so that they can be able to utilize their more popular franchises. The point is that now Blue Sky Studios as a studio is no more, and everything that is going to be done from this point onward is going to be done by Disney. And here we are, Adventures of Buck Wild, and this is going to be the first out of the post shutdown of Blue Sky Studios, where we do see what they're capable of taking pre-existing properties and turn it into their own thing. And this is a Disney Plus exclusive, so this has not been released in theaters. And the premise of this is very bizarre. It focuses on Buck Wild, which, here's the thing, if it was Buck Wild from the third movie, we would be all for this. But if it was Buck Wild from the fifth movie, we'll be like, no, please die in a fire. And to make matters even so much better, sarcasm, the focus is on Crash and Eddie.
Yeah, like the two, what we consider the worst characters in the Ice Age franchise.
Yeah, who came up with this idea?
I
Hey, guess
know.
what? We're going to have another Ice Age movie. Oh, is it going to be an Ice Age movie about the misadventures of Manny, Diego, and Sid? Or maybe we should have a continuation of the first movie where they get to see the baby again. How about if we just make a movie about the two most annoying characters? Bravo! Get a promotion.
Yeah, I can only imagine that. Again, like I'm not familiar with like all the development behind the scenes things that were going on, but I can probably imagine they wanted to do something Ice Age related, and the only person they could get back was Simon Pegg. And I think that's probably where everything started to kind of fall apart with this project. I think when they realized that they weren't going to get anyone else back for this, and you can tell right off. I mean, here's the thing about this: the Ice Age Adventures of Brock Wild was made in 2022, and it is computer animated like Blue Sky, other movies have been in the past. But the problem is that this movie, you can tell right from the get-go, is not in line with what Blue Sky had for their vision. I mean, like you can see how poorly produced some of the 3D animation is in the movements and in the jackiness of what we're seeing here, and it just feels like this doesn't feel like it's a real thing. It just feels so bizarre when you're looking at it. And on top of that, like they bring in people who are effectively, there to replace. I mean, you say for example, you have Jim Carrey who did The Mask, and then we have The Mask and animated series, and as we all know, Jim Carrey did not reprise his role as either The Mask or Stanley Ipkiss. So that was played by a different character actor altogether. in this movie, they have effectively not brought back most of, if any, of the original, voice cast, and have effectively replaced them with basically people who would have, let's say for example, like Disney decided to do a TV series based on Ice Age, and they brought in these actors. I would say, okay, fair enough. Like, they're going to need to, they're not making a movie, they're making a TV series, and so obviously there's going to be, a lot of like, production costs that are going to be rammed down quite a bit. They're not going to bring back the celebrity voices to do all of this. That's fair enough. But this is what they've done here with Buck Wild. I think just because it's a Disney Plus exclusive. I mean, I keep this in mind. Like, and I get like this is different because obviously the pandemic and everything like that. Turning Red was a Disney Plus exclusive, if you remember. But I mean, they still kept the quality standard that I would expect to see from a Pixar movie. In this situation, they've kept none of that.
No, none of that. The animation is far worse. The voice acting, even though it kind of sounds like the characters, it's more or less a facsimile of what you would expect because they brought sound-alikes. And the storyline is just way too ridiculous for its own good. They essentially decided to have the equivalent of a Darwinian Andros from Star Fox to be as our main bad guy.
Yeah, and I mean, our bad guy in this movie effectively is just Dr. Robotnik. Effectively, like, or it was Zordrak from the Dreamstone, or like, Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, it's just, bad guy. There's
Yeah,
no complexity to this character whatsoever. On top of that, like, it's probably like one of the worst villains that I think we've seen so far. And like that's saying something for Blue Sky villains, because we've seen some pretty terrible Blue Sky villains in this
oh
running
yeah, exactly.
Blue
Like,
Sky.
let's be honest. I mean, Blue Sky Studios has had a reputation of delivering not that great villains. They either have no motivation or they're just the most stock cliche villains that you could ever expect. I mean, like, you can count barely in one hand on any good Blue Sky Studios villains.
Yeah, but the fact that I think this is probably Orson's probably like the worst villain. I probably imagine, but I mean, whether he actually counts or not, because like this is not a Blue Sky like produced, production. So it's this is a Disney, production. So I guess maybe in Ice Age, maybe this is probably like the worst villain. But at the same time, you can't really say because this is not like an officially an Ice Age movie. This is like if anything, a spin-off. Like this is about Buck Wild. So
Exactly,
like
yeah.
it's that's another thing as well. Is this like part of like the main Ice Age lore? Is it because at the very beginning of the movie they tell you about everything that's happened in Ice Age, effectively, which I wouldn't be opposed like again, but I don't know like the way I feel about the way that they retold the entire story. It makes it kind of feel like Disney kind of looked at their own audience and said, "Oh no, nobody knows what Ice Age is here at the Disney in the House of Mouse, so we've got to explain it to everybody again."
Yeah, I,
Or
I mean, I understand if it was like a movie that hasn't had a lot of like sequels in a long time, and so they're trying to catch up with their audience. Which here's the thing, like we actually praise movies that do that, especially with movies that had a long series of sequels, because if you're going into a movie that is based off of a long franchise for the very first time, newcomers are going to be completely lost. And we understand that. I mean, we complained about the first SpongeBob movie, even though the series was around for a while at that point in time, it wasn't really easy for newcomers to get into, which is why we like the introduction of the second movie, because even though SpongeBob had been around for a decade at that point, it was able to ease followers into watching this movie, especially for those who didn't know anything about SpongeBob. I guess they were trying to do the same thing here with Ice Age. It's like, okay, now that we have the franchise, now that we have the entirety of the Ice Age franchise, maybe there'll be some people who are watching Buck Wild and they would have no knowledge of the 5 movies. Okay, let's have this little introduction so that we can be able to catch up to people so that they can be able to understand what's going on. But the problem is that there are a lot of continuity errors in this. For example, okay, sure, we have Manny, Diego, Sid, Ellie, Crash, and Eddie. The other characters, such as Sid's grandma, Brooke, Shira, where are they? Now, we can assume that, obviously Sid's grandma stayed in Geotopia, as we saw in the last movie, because, she wanted to stay forever young and she was with the Shangri-Lama. I got that part. But I guess Brooke I can understand her staying in Geotopia too. Otherwise, she'll become an old sloth. Again, understandable. But Shira, did her and Diego break up or something?
I mean, at this point, I think, I actually didn't actually ask about She-Ra at one point, or actually ask about some of the other stuff. I don't know. Maybe they was like, oh, She-Ra, like, oh, it might be like too close to She-Ra, Princess of Power, so therefore we can't really like have that character anymore. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe it's
And
probably
then,
about that.
and here's the thing: this is the only Ice Age movie in the entire franchise that Scrat is not in.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing about this. Like, if they're gonna do this, they should have just done a reboot, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
Like, they should have just said, okay, this is gonna be, there's too many sequels now for Ice Age for everyone to catch up on. We're gonna like do this is our version of Ice Age. I would have accepted that.
Me
Like,
too.
and done that. But the fact that they've gone with this direction, it's just baffling because what is this? Is this a spin-off or is it like part of the Ice Age franchise? Is it, oh, if there's going to be any more Ice Age in the future, which, by the way, after going through this, I think I highly doubt there's going to be any more, Ice Age. I think after that, I think this is probably going to be it. But I mean, is this going to be, if it is going to be some more Ice Age, I mean, are we going to reference this movie again at some point? Like, it's just, I feel like I've left this movie probably more confused and less, eager to see any more of Ice Age after this.
Yeah,
To be honest
I
with
mean,
you.
I don't know if this is supposed to be like Return of Jafar, in which they decided to do like this direct-to-video movie, and then shortly afterwards we had the Aladdin animated series. Is Buckwild supposed to be like a pilot, and if it becomes really successful on Disney Plus with a lot of viewership, they're gonna make a Buckwild animated series?
You know
Because
what?
it
When you and me were watching this together, that's the first thing I said. One of the first things I said, like, oh, hey, is this supposed to be, a pilot for a TV series? And like, is this Belle's Magical World all over again? Effectively,
Mhm.
like, we're basically doing like three stories and like all of them crammed into like 1.5 hours.
Yeah, well, I
Effectively,
mean, it didn't necessarily have that structure, but the practice, it definitely felt that way. Like, yeah, this was supposed to be like a pilot for a potential animated series.
yeah, because like you have like multiple stories. By the way, like this isn't a criticism of like the story structure. I mean, all movies have this, but you had like the whole thing of like the herd looking for Crash and Eddie and wondering where they've gone. Then you have like the story of like Buck going with Crash and Eddie to obviously stop Orson, and then you have like the story between Buck and Z, and the former superhero. By the way, they had a superhero team at one point, which by the way,
Oh,
actually, it's a cool concept actually.
yeah.
So I don't fault that part of the movie at all. I
Yeah,
don't
I
think.
don't fault it either. It wasn't like completely out of nowhere, like the Cruisin'. Remember the Cruise a New Age where they introduced the Thunder Sisters that Graham was a part of? It's like, yeah, that was out of place because it doesn't sound like that would be like something that she would have done. I mean, it was like girl power. We need to save the guys from the monkeys. But here with this, it makes sense because Buck has been in a lot of adventures in the Lost World, and we can assume that at one point maybe he was part of a large team where they were trying to save the creatures from the Lost World and bring harmony and peace. I can get that.
Yeah, but I mean the difference between I think what they did in the cruise. I mean I think what they tried to do in the cruise was they were trying to like push the idea of like, oh hey, what if we did this movie for the cruise, like or this spin-off movie? Would you guys be into that, or girls be into that? I should say. I think that's probably what it was aimed at. But
Yeah.
this, I think it's they didn't really do anything to like build this idea of like Buck had his own like team of heroes at one point.
No,
Like
they
it was kind of like
not even remotely so, because from the third movie when we were first introduced to him, he was a loner, and he was this adventurous loner who was a little bit kooky, but yeah, I never really saw him as like somebody who would be part of a large group.
well, I mean the Joker had the Suicide Squad, didn't he? So like
I
I
guess
mean
that's true, yeah.
even loners can have their own groups. Eventually like when the story of the character commands it. I guess and also like look at the Undertaker in WWE. He had the Ministry of Darkness in the 90s. So
Sure.
like so yeah, like it's people who end up being kind of like looking like lone characters do end up in groups at some point
Fair
in
enough.
time when the time allow well at least when the story allows it at least.
Hmm.
Anyway, we're getting way ahead of we're getting way away from this movie
Yeah,
here, but
let's focus
uh,
on Crash and Eddie. So, yeah, they want to be able to become their independent selves. They feel like Ellie is too smothering and she doesn't allow them to do whatever they want. And so they decide that they want to have the opportunity to be on their own. And obviously, they said, no, this is a terrible idea because you don't know how to find food, you don't know how to make your own shelter, and you don't know how to protect yourself from predators, which of course they don't. I mean, we've seen throughout the movies that they've been a part of, they have done absolutely nothing other than just do a whole bunch of stupid jokes, and whenever they get themselves in trouble, they get rescued.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I like the idea, like, if we have to go in this direction, I mean, Crash and Eddie are terrible characters to begin with. I mean, the one thing I'll say about this movie is that at least they attempt to build character in them. At least,
sure,
they're attempting to like make them like somewhat likable. It's just about it's executed terribly, like everything else in this movie.
Of course it is.
Unfortunately, I like the idea of Crash and Eddie, not being told that basically they're just like they're immature teenagers, effectively. Like they can't look after themselves, and if they were going to go in that direction with these characters, they should have done a situation where they had the opportunity to like go out onto their own and try and I'm sure say for example go to college or something,
what's the Ice Age equivalent of college?
I don't know. Like, well, they could make one. I mean, like, look at all the other inventive stuff they've done in the Ice Age franchise. You couldn't say that they, look at Finding Nemo. They had a school of fish.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it's obviously based off of a pun as well, because a large group of fish is called a school of fish.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the way that the herd was going, I really thought they were gonna have a more adapted society where they were having weddings, for crying out loud.
Yeah, they weren't gonna thinking about that. I was literally thinking about that. In the last movie, they were in a large forest with a whole bunch of other creatures, and now in this one, they're by themselves again. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Well, this is the thing. It's a spin-off, so of course you can only have a certain amount of characters in a spin-off movie because the whole attention is obviously on Buck because he's the main. He's supposedly the main character of
exactly.
Of
it literally does not start with Buck in his own movie, even though he's in the title. We have Ellie, who's the narrator, at least for the first bit and the last bit. Then we have Crash and Eddie, and then Buck comes into the picture.
Yeah, and it kind of makes Ellie's beginning really why are you doing this? It's just this is supposed to be a movie about Buck, and he's the only member of the original cast you were able to get back. Why would you not start it right off with Buck and Simon Pegg? And
I mean, it would have
established him first because he's the main character of the movie.
Exactly. You could have had him do the narration, of all the adventures that he's been a part of. You could have had him in the Lost World and fighting off against Rudy. By the way, Rudy is not in this movie, even though that he should have been, but we'll get to that later. You could have had him going off into the upper world and talking to the guys and, trying to stop the asteroid. I mean, you could have referenced the third and the fifth movie right there, and we could have seen a whole bunch of other adventures that he was a part of that we didn't know of. But hey, that could lead into an animated series, Yeah. Because that's clearly what you want to do.
Or even better, just isolate the rest of the Ice Age cast altogether because you can't get the voice actors back and just concentrate on Buck and bring a bunch of new characters like Z, like Orson, like everyone else in the Lost World. Establish that world.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you want to have a little moment in which you get to pan toward the main characters and then go down, and then that would be the focus on these on the Lost World characters, great. That way we'll know that the focus is not going to be above the surface. It's going to be below in the Lost World. At least a little nod would be just enough. So that way we can be able to, distance ourselves from the other characters because they've already had their time in the spotlight. It's Buck's turn. But no, we just have to cram everybody in there because maybe they felt that Buck couldn't carry his own movie.
Yeah, it's just why bother in the first place then?
Because they had the rights to.
And look what's happened. This is a car wreck. It really is. I mean, we'd like to go into the story, but to be quite honest with you, it's a pretty standard story when you really think about it, with just too many complexities involved in the same time. It's Crash and Eddie basically going on a Boys to Men kind of story. Buck Wild gets involved, and then he has his own you find out he has a super team, and half of them end up getting killed. and Z is and him are the only surviving members, and they have to get back together to stop Orson because he's come back. And the way that they dealt with Orson, he's like a stereotypical like villain sort of thing. Like he believed in that there should be chaos, and he should be the one who basically takes over everything.
Yeah,
Mwahaha, bad guy.
exactly.
Like it's just there is no risk, there is no there's no creativity in what's being done here. Again, it just feels like, Blue Sky has died, and Disney took the corpse of Blue Sky and started parading it around the graveyard, expecting to entertain anybody. And really, it's like, if anything, it's just going to have some people looking with like, very, awkward stares. Some people are just terrified of what they're doing, and some people are just kind of just shaking their heads in disappointment, saying, oh, look how sad this looks.
It
You
does
know?
look sad. While the entire animation community is like mourning of the loss of Blue Sky Studios, Disney is just dancing in their grave saying, "We can do whatever we want now."
No, I mean, it's not dancing in the grave. It's parading the corpse around the place and horrifying everybody. Like it's disgusting. Like you ever seen that's a Robot Chicken sketch? Jasper the douchebag ghost, and
Yes.
he brings like the grandmother to life. Like that's what they're doing with Blue Sky right now. Like
Yeah,
that.
instead of letting it pass away with whatever dignity that Blue Sky had left, they're just going to bring it back up and just parade it around because they want to be able to make extra money.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean it's by the way, Orson has his ability to control these raptors and using fire, and which I don't know. I mean, like why is it that he is now the Lord of the Flame when Sid was the one who accidentally discovered fire? I don't know. They don't care, and so I guess there's no reason to ask that question too heavily, I guess. But it's yeah, there's nothing really I can say to everybody to encourage them to watch this movie, let alone like be intrigued by it. In a
Yeah.
way, it's just
And there's, and another thing that they decided to put into this movie was, hey, we're going to have all of these references for people who remember the last Ice Age movies, which you shouldn't do, by the way. You have to be able to let a movie stand on its own. I mean, like we said before, this is supposed to be a spin-off movie focusing on Buck Wild. Focus on all of the stuff that he's done as opposed to like putting in references to the previous movies, which by the way, I mean, I thought this was supposed to be like a standalone feature for people to ease themselves into. I mean, that's what happened in the beginning of the movie. But then you have
this is the
other
problem. Like,
characters.
this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't know whether it wants to be a spin-off with Buck. It doesn't know whether it wants to be a sequel to the other Ice Age movies. It doesn't know whether it's going to like start the story again and basically just have it with the basic premise cast, or it doesn't know what it wants to do. And that's the thing. Like, there's no direction here about
Yeah.
where you want to go creatively with this movie. And it's just yeah. I mean, this thing just exists because Ice Age exists. I
Mm.
get the feeling.
Yeah, and you would think that because it's the Lost World, they would bring back, elements from the Lost World. But no, they didn't even do that right either. Like the entrance to get into the Lost World involved a very, very long ditch that had to be crossed in a bridge filled with laughing gas. But no, instead we have just a little tiny ditch that you just had to jump over. There's no laughing gas. It's easy for you to get into, and then you're there. The whole point of it being the Lost World was that it was difficult for you to get in there, and they just stumbled on it by accident when Sid brought the three eggs up on the surface to hatch them, and pretending like he's their mother because he was jealous of Manny and Ellie having a baby. And then we had to get the mother T-Rex involved, and so that's the whole reason why we even have a Lost World. Oh, and speaking of the mother, yeah, you would think that Rudy, a major threat that was in the third movie, would be a part of this one. No, he's not there. Instead, we have to resurrect the mama T-Rex from the third movie as like the main way that we're able to stop the raptors.
And even then, they wasted our opportunity as well.
Yeah, they wasted the
So,
opportunity. It's like, I just don't understand. Like, there are so many little things that they could have easily fixed, but they just decided not to.
was this a cash grab? I mean, it can't be because it's on Disney Plus. Because so they've already got the money already. So I mean, what were they attempting to try and do here
I
with
don't know.
this film? It's so confusing. And it's just how can I'm sorry. I never thought I would in the word years I started doing podcasting. I started doing talk radio back in around 2006, 2008. I never really thought that I would come towards a subject matter where I'd be almost lost for words about how bad it actually is. And here we are at the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. And I'm just totally struggling to put into words about how terrible this thing actually is. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm just baffled that this even exists.
it's almost insulting when you think about it. All the stuff that we've been through with Blue Sky Studios, like it's we've had so many good movies, like the Peanuts movie, for example. Like he's the magnum opus, I think, of the Blue Sky collection. And the fact that we've had like so many other great Blue Sky movies that you can listen to in this series, it's just a shame that this is their legacy. That
Yeah.
Disney has decided to do, and it's just if anything, it is quite insulting.
It is. I mean, Blue Sky Studios already dragged the Ice Age franchise into the ground by themselves. And Disney is, instead of letting the series die in whatever dignity it had left, they decided to continue on and sink it even lower.
Yeah. By the way, Simon Pegg, who is Buck, and Urkesh Amavukta and Justina Machado, who play Orson and Z respectively, they are basically, the only either new or returning cast
Yeah, because
for
everybody
that.
else, like we said before, are sound-alikes for the previous established characters because they couldn't bring in they couldn't bring in all the other major characters, voice actors to reprise their roles. They didn't bring back Ray Romano, Queen Latifah, John Leguizamo, Dennis Leary. They didn't even bring back Sean William Scott and Josh Peck to voice as Crash and Eddie.
I mean, you're Disney. You couldn't bring these guys back.
I understand because it was the pandemic. Everybody was suffering from major money loss. And we already know about the dumpster fire, what happened when Bob Chapek took over. So I can kind of excuse that, but it's Disney. You're a billion-dollar corporation and you couldn't even at least have the dignity of bringing like one or two of the major voice actors back.
Yeah, and the only person they managed to bring back is Simon Pegg. I wonder how Simon Pegg feels about this.
That's
I
a really good
genuinely do.
question. It makes me wonder if he's one of two camps when it comes to being an actor and being in a lot of movies. He's either a job's a job, I'm going to take this role because I need the money so I can eat and survive, especially with what Hollywood is going through with all the major strikes, or B, he probably thought, oh, this is an Ice Age movie. I liked voicing as Buck. This will be a lot of fun. And then when he probably saw the final product, he was like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I'm just you know what? I'm actually generally going to see if there is, there was saying Simon Pegg says voicing Ice Adventures of Buck Wild. Oh wait, it's just a video, so I'm not going to go into like videos in this topic, but
Yeah, but
um,
but but the point is that
again, I
Disney.
don't until I've read it, I don't know what Simon Pegg's reception was to the movie or how he feels about it, so I can't speak for him.
All right then. Yeah, so even the animation is super inconsistent. I mean, we already knew from the get-go that since Blue Sky Studios shut down, they were not going to animate this movie. And so they had to get the people behind the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies to do that. And so the animation was already choppy from the beginning, and they actually had a lot less people working on it, working from home because it was during the pandemic. And there's some parts of it that look really inconsistent. Like there are some parts of the movie that are a little bit choppy, and then there's some parts of the movie where you get to see the fur of the characters. Some of it is, blowing in the wind when they're flying up in the air, and the other ones are stagnant. And then when the characters are walking around in the snow, there's no footprints when they're walking, but then when they need to track them down, there are footprints in the snow. So yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies.
Hmm. So, the music also is well, you can't real there's not I mean usually like there would be like a mainstream song, or there'd be like like a pop song or something like that that would usually like come on during a montage, but there's nothing. It's just generic movie music effectively.
Yeah, I mean the reason why is because they brought a new composer into this movie, Batu Sinir. So it's not done by David Newman and it's not done by John Powell. So they had somebody else come in to do the music, and it's as generic and bland as you can expect it to be.
And Batu Sine, he does not have a Wikipedia account, so you can always tell how well known he is for his music. So
Yeah, so we can't see about all the other previous stuff that he was a part of. In fact, I can
yeah.
probably say the same for some of the other
It's funny,
voice
like as you know, well, to be fair to the voice actors, they actually do have like IMDb's and like things like that. Like, unfortunately, I'm pointing this out as well. Like, some of them do not have very good resumes. Like, I'm seeing like the Smurfs 2 and like video games and like various other ones. And don't get me wrong, like you got to do what you got to do in order to like make a living as a voice actor. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying like it's and don't get me wrong, like Lou Ferraro was actually an animator before. Obviously, he went to do on did Linguini and Ratatouille, and that's like one of my my all time favorite Pixar movies. So I'm not saying anything in regards to that, but I'm just saying like for something as big as Ice Age and the fact that it was like predecessed by celebrity voices and music that was also up there with some of the big major motion pictures. The fact that it's kind of like Ice Age has like descended into this is very sad
Yeah.
when you look at it. So I'm nothing wrong with newcomers coming into the fray, but within those newcomers, there usually is, a mixture of like, veteran, other like, top quality voice actors that are in there. Again, not doing this as an insult to any other voice actors out there who do a really incredible job, but this is Ice Age we're talking about. Like this is not Ice Age the video game. This is not Ice Age like the TV series. This is not Ice Age the the game on your app or like whatever. This is supposed to be one of the movies, or supposedly supposed to be like either one of the spin-off movies or one of the movies that's in the Ice Age franchise, which then carries on the story of the Ice Age thing. Like it's the fact that it's turned into this is just wrong,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we have really much to say about this movie. Let's just rank it.
Okay then. It's well. Here's the thing about this. Like, there are some good ideas here. With Buck, and Z, clashing with their ideologies. The villain is Stark. We're focusing on the wrong characters, in my opinion, for Ice Age for Crash and Eddie. In fact, Crash and Eddie or any of the other Ice Age characters really didn't need to be in this. This could easily been about Buck, and you could have stuck in like some other supporting cast to replace the other Ice Age characters who you couldn't get the voice actors back for. The music is uninspiring. The animation is just good grief. Like, it's a massive climb down from what Blue Sky Studios was giving us. But I thought that the what Blue Sky were doing, from Ferdinand up to Spies in Disguise, I thought their animation was top notch, and it's a shame that they went by the wayside, because I was really looking forward to what the next. The next thing we had Nimona, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And it was just
I
they were
mean,
just
that's what we
missing out so
said.
much.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been talking about with Blue Sky throughout this point in the retrospective, is that even though that their stories were pretty mediocre, even though that their characters were stock, their animation was what made them stood out, is that they continue to get better and better and better throughout each film that they've ever released. From the beginnings of Ice Age, when they were a little bit rough compared to what Pixar and DreamWorks were doing, to Nimona, which is one of the most amazing looking animated movies that we've seen so far throughout even this year and throughout anything that we've ever seen so far in our lives. So
Yeah, everyone in the animation community right now is pushing for Nimona to win an Oscar. They really
yeah,
are.
they
Like,
are.
just and I was fully support that, even though it's a Netflix movie.
Well, I mean, Pinocchio won last year, and that was a Netflix movie.
Exactly, yeah, but there's been a huge debate about shouldn't it come out in the theaters before we start saying like Academy Awards. But I mean that's a different topic for a different podcast. But anyway, going back to my rating. So with all this said, I mean, Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild unfortunately is not the predecessor to the Ice Age franchise, and quite frankly, I think it's pretty insulting. So with that, unfortunately, I have to say 2.5 out of 10.
I'm going to say the same thing, 2.5, because You would think that a movie about Buck Wild would be focusing on Buck Wild and his amazing adventures. But no, we had to stick Crash and Eddie in there who didn't need to be there. And also, we had to have a lot of stock things. We had to have a stock villain, we had to have a stock story, and just a lot of like a lot of errors. Like the animation is cheaper, the music is pretty uninspired, the voice acting is very distracting, especially since we've already come to establish what they already sound like from 5 movies. And yeah, I would just say that it should have ended with the last movie. It should have ended with Collision Course because, yes, that movie was awful and it ruined Buck, and it went all over the place with the characters and the story. Yes, but at least it ended off with Peaches and Julian getting married and with the characters kind of having their last moments of hurrah. But here it's just no, we just need to continue on with a story that shouldn't have even been existing. So yeah, for the sake of that, 2.5 out of 10.
Yeah, what a shame, you know.
Yeah.
So
But at least we have some sliver of hope for the Ice Age franchise because tune in next time as we're going to be talking about the very last thing that Blue Sky Studios was working on before they shut down, and that is Scrat Tales.
okay, but until then, take care and bye bye for now.
Bye, everyone.